funny now, looking at you know, how the polls, you know, and all that last election, you know, it's like the libertarians, and you know, there was only a short bombing run on libertarianism by the media.
Bombing run? You mean you mean like a negative thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, like, you know, Maddow only had to do so many, you know, clips on, you know, the scary libertarians, you know, oh boy, what are we going to do with our ideas about silver and gold, you know, and so now, though, what's been interesting is the libertarians, because so many of them are atheists and agnostic, that the conservatives who are religious, the conservatives who are libertarians and religious, the libertarians who really are relatively agnostic and atheists, who can have then a wide variety of social views.
Right.
You know, because some are just conservative because they're like, well, no, most standards of all civilizations have been relatively norm. You know, they've had these typical norms. You know,
right.
You walk into town, women look like this, men look like this. They typically have these divisions of labor. They have, you know, and children hold this importance, you know, all that kind of stuff. People feel this or that way about the name they identify as their group of people. You know, like, I'm a Scythian, I'm a Thracian.
Well, do you think what you're saying is that is that a view of most people in general, regardless of like political platform, or is that just a libertarian viewpoint, or Republican or Democrat?
I think libertarians are unique in analyzing history better in this way. I think what I'm starting to notice is that there's this thing happening now where the way Republicans will sort of, you know, there's so many that, you know, that you are like, well, I get your fiscal conservatism, but okay, the way you're brushing over eras of history, detail's important. Brushing over things broadly isn't.
And it can be misleading.
And it's like, so what are you trying to sell me? Are you trying to sell me snake oil? And so what's happening now is there's this real thing happening in the general right, which, you know, the libertarians usually are included in that, is that there's this infighting now happening, and it's all because of Trump. Because now it's this thing of, well, he's not a politician. Yeah. So people are like, really? That's what you're going to offer? Yeah. After all these years of taking, you know, of taking success and just throwing it to defeat and watching it get mauled, you're really going to now have somebody who's bizarrely successful in the election, at least in the election, not anything else, in this election period, and you're going to keep trying to drive the bus over the guy. What do you know?
On the weirdest of premises.
Yeah.
Like, you know, based not on his platform or anything else, but just that he's not a politician. That is, you know, you could, if you were to substantiate that, say, well, he's worthy because of this, this, and this, or unworthy because this, and this, or he's worthy in a way, but I have reservations here because of this, this, and this. To simply say, well, he's not a politician, I'm gonna throw the baby out with the bath. That's kind of weird.
And more and more, like, because I watch a lot of these Twitter back and forths, that the people who are conservative are really now, like, it's every issue. They're finally, like, the guy who's the Republican writer for Washington Post, you know, he's really, like, he's fighting. I mean, he's in a melee. He's like fighting all these people who are, and some of these people are now sort of the way out there. Like, you've gotten that guy who owned the Dixie flag mad. He never gets on Twitter. You have to deal with him going after, and the only people he knows are Republicans.
And he's going after in a negative way after.
Yeah, and he's like.
So are you saying that the Republicans are talking about every issue now, or are you saying they're talking about issues they never used to?
The conservatives overall now are having to really deal with, because, you know, and somebody actually wrote a great article about William F. Buckley Jr. That all conservatives sound like William F. Buckley Jr. and they all have shows, you know, they discuss very, very nicely. And so, you know, William F. Buckley Jr. has to say to somebody like Sid Vicious, you know, has to treat him seriously, and so now the right is at this stage where they're like, no, none of us are William F. Buckley Jr. You know, like, well, no. You are a guy on Twitter I'm going to take a piece of. You're like William F. Buckley Jr., but I'm what votes. And now I'm on Twitter, and I could say things to you in public. You know, and it's really kind of funny to like.
Now let me ask you: do you think is that more of an issue? You said the Republicans talking about so many issues that they didn't talk about that what only the Democrats used to talk about, like, or just
no?
Is it because like is it the social media that we have now with Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all these things? Is it because you got a lot of citizens who are now being vocal, and politicians are finally listening, and you got somebody like Trump stirring up the whole mix and forcing all these things together, forcing the Republican Party to at least pay lip service to issues they never talked about before?
Oh yeah, I'm totally seeing it now, where they now have to deal with people who they're like, we literally could just drive the election bus out of this town, and we never have to deal with these people, but now they're on Twitter. And now they're following us, you know, like everywhere, you know, and making jokes, and their kids know how to use Photoshop. You know, and this Photoshopping really mean things. You know? And then that's actually one of the things too. Is now there's this generation of people like one in particular, Steven Crowder, did a whole thing on Trump where he just did himself up like Trump. And then he just channeled Trump and would say these ridiculous things. And it was one part of it was sort of the admiration was there, you know, like, because it was a good imitation. The admiration for the fact that he does say things like that heads of countries would take his calls, you know, or something like that, you know, where it's like, yes, there actually is probably a likelihood, yes, Mr. Trump, that you get your calls taken by very, very powerful people. What's funny, though, is when we say Jesus would take your telephone calls. And that this is entirely meant for only conservatives to see this comedy bit. And, you know, that he wanted conservatives to see that because of the whole thing of, well, this wouldn't be funny to Democrats because they don't get what church does Donald Trump go to? Like, is he religious? Like, what, you know, like, this guy doesn't fit into any of the boxes of any of the people who are usually included in our club here, people. You know, like, you know, here's all the ways we could mock that. You know?
You know, what I'm interested in is with, say, Donald Trump, he's on the Republican ticket, right? And some of the libertarians, like Rand Paul, or his father, what was his father's name? Ron Paul. Ron Paul went on the Republican ticket last time. And I'm just wondering why libertarians don't get also on the Democrat. Because, I mean, libertarians aren't really Republicans or Democrats.
Democrats see the libertarians as a couple steps away from the Nazi Party. They literally, and it takes only a few words as you start to, like, you know, like, you don't, even if you don't use something like a typical, like, libertarian phrase or phrase from economics, that you just start, like, doubting certain things, like saying, well, if it's a moral good to feed the poor, why wouldn't you leave that to organizations that dedicate themselves only to that? Based on whatever moral organization.
Not just organizations, how about individuals, families, communities? That's a libertarian stance.
And it's rather than it being levied from taxes, because then it's not really charity. It's not being given. This is and
it's done under force.
And I was like, not only, you know, if it's not so much, even if, say, if it was force, I was like, once it's no longer given, actually force then gives the opportunity for just for it to be arbitrary. That somebody eventually is like, oh, well, we'll start collecting the taxes from the poorest people. You know, I was like, that's all it has to happen. You know, I was like, that's why, you know, libertarians don't like state taxation, you know, and especially by the federal government, because they have the most access to force. And so the moment you even start venturing down this road, Democrats will spot it. They'll spot the language, and because they know they like taxation.
Well, you know, the reason why I distrust Democrats, not all Democrats, but like There's a lady in town, you know, the mayor, Mayor Piercy, nice lady. I don't like her politics, and I think part of the thing is the temptation to be a Democrat, in my estimation, is, and I'm not a Republican, you know, I'm not even, I wouldn't even say I'm a libertarian, although most of my views tend to be in that platform, it seems. But the Democrats, or I should say, Miss Perry, you know, it's easy to be a politician as a Democrat and be a hero, because all the poor love Democrats. The poor love, well, not all the poor, but I mean, it's easy to be loved when you're willing to give people who think they need or do need money, and it doesn't matter if that money's coming from other people's pockets. Yeah. It's like they're playing Robin Hood. They're like, I'm going to give you money. And so everyone loved Robin Hood. The poor loved Robin. The poor, and the thing is that, you know, the intention to want to see people not suffer is great. The intention to see people, you know, come out of the mire and the muck and mire is great. But the method of taking from other people by force is what makes me ill. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that I think there's two things going. When you tax people, it's taken by force. And on the other hand, the people who need the money, whether they need it or whether they qualify and don't need it and qualify for it, all of a sudden they get this sense of entitlement and this like, well, it's part of the tax dollars. I deserve this. Mm-hmm. And there's no thankfulness in saying, thank God we live in a country. It's like, hey, you know, the damn rich, I need this. It's owed to me.
And it is a thing I've figured out that while I think because we do physical training, there's the thing that you're lying in bed, you need to get under the bar. You can't get stronger until you get under the bar. Yeah. So you gotta risk not enjoying it to get the payback.
Right.
And so so we get that, and that's so habitual that I think it is a thing in our minds.
I gotta sacrifice some work for it and struggle to earn it. Yeah. To get it. To earn it.
There you go, to earn it.
And then when you earn it, then you go, not only do I feel better because I earned it and worked hard, but I'm like, nobody gave it to me. Mm-hmm. I didn't inherit it.
Yeah.
I had to use my intelligence and my grit and my hard work and, you know, my work ethic to earn it. And I'm enjoying all the benefits, even more than somebody who's simply given something who can't really appreciate it. So in the physical realm, when you're dealing with that, or even in the academic realm, when people sacrifice to learn mathematics to get the degree, when you earn something, it's just a lot better than simply giving. And even part of the problem, the reason why people don't like having money given by churches and charities, and I can kind of understand this because my roommate Phoenix and I were talking about this today. You have a couple different types of people who need help. Some of the people, most of them, have gotten themselves in a bad situation because of bad planning. I've been there. I planned badly and got myself in a bad situation. And it's very unmanning to ask for help. It's very unmanning, even for people who feel entitled, you know, to go ask like they're you know, unless, I mean, there's a lot of panhandlers who don't feel bad about it at all. They figure, well, everybody's got money, I'm in a bad situation. But the thing is, you have some people who feel, you know, like unmanned. They feel, especially if they have any sense of pride, they feel like, oh, I can't ask for this, and even though I didn't ask for it, and you're offering this help, it makes them feel loose face a little bit. So I was telling Michael, I was telling Phoenix, I said, look, if we could find a way, I'm just thinking of specific people, to go over there and say, let's come over and have a little barbecue, a little get-together like the Amish, and we'll help you fix your yard, we'll help you do this and this and this. And while we're doing this, we'll socialize and have fun. And then next week, you can help me with my yard. It's basically, we're helping each other.
Yeah.
You know, and even though you may need money from me or some food supplies today, I need work from you. Mm-hmm. So you give them away a saving face, and you give them away of feeling like there's an even return. Mm. You know, so that's what I think we should set ourselves up as individuals and families and communities to help our friends and community. Now, there's some people who will resent, who will ask for it, not be shy about asking it. They feel entitled, they'll demand it, and then they'll resent the very people who give it to them. And so that's why most people are certain people are more comfortable with having that money taken by people with more than them, more resources, and have it put into this general fund, which is often misused and exploited. And so they don't have to look at the face of the people who bled and put their sweat and tears into getting this money. They don't have to look them in the face and say thank you or anything. It just comes from like manna from heaven.
Yeah.
And that's why some people are comfortable with that. And that's the very reason why I'm not comfortable with that. Because I think people need to be emotionally invested in each other. You know.
Well, there's definitely the economist Thomas Sowell gets into third party the third party arbitrator kind of thing, or the third party expert, and it's definitely something that I've now picked up. It is really sort of a part of the culture, and that's then why we see it manifested in the Democratic Party and a lot of sort of the culture around that.
Right.
The people who they're like, well, I don't, like, say one that would be real popular, very, very popular culturally over there on the Democratic side would be the body acceptance movement. Now,
the body acceptance movement.
Yes, and
I haven't heard of that movement. Okay,
so yes, it's called body acceptance. There's actually a video that really recently broke the internet called "Dear Fat People" by a beautiful blonde comedian.
Okay. And then this guy in radio personality responded to her. He was a little pissed off at her about fat shaming.
A lot of people did, and yes, and so then but her whole thing is, I mean, she just went off on every possible, the big bone thing. She just stuck jokes at every possible thing that's come up, and she went after that movement, the body acceptance movement.
Right.
So now one of the things that would see, like, say a libertarian weightlifter might, would probably put it as, oh, well, no, there is ample evidence that actually if people were to participate in some kind of group physical culture activity, not even that rigorous, that they would actually feel better. Like they would suddenly in their brains just feel happiness because they are around other people.
Right.
They're doing something, and it's better for them.
Right.
And that really everything that we put together, when we add the opposite of all those things, we have why there needs to be body acceptance. We have people who probably are consuming calories alone and not doing something active with other people.
Right.
And they don't feel happy.
Right.
That on top of it all, they don't feel happy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a movement that was supposed to literally be sort of patting them on the back. From the libertarian view, that would be the well, that's what I'm seeing.
Right.
Because the reports of both, people who lift weights and stay in shape and people who don't, this is what they report. This is what science as a third party generally says. For the Democratic mindset, I've realized, no, it's TV hosts are the third party. And they have to make sure, okay, children, stop being mean to each other now. You know that you simply just have to pretend that there's no such thing as obesity, or you have to pretend that you your friend who is very heavy is not happy. Like, you have to pretend that they are. And that's another one as well that I'm just sort of sitting there like, wait, okay, now that, okay, I don't get it. You guys got to be realizing that one at least, But it's all these sort of media figures or socially important people, specifically to culturally Democrats, like Beyonce might have something to say about this. And they all think that she's a very valid person to listen to. She sang a bunch of songs that were very popular. It's that's because that's who you pay attention to.
Right.
Not somebody who Glock. Don't listen to that guy. What could that guy know? It's what could he ever have insights on?
Right.
And that's I've started to realize, I'm like, no. This is really like this is a changing in the culture. This is it's something happening in the minds of people.
Right.
And that I really have found that, and this was sort of the thing, I think you dealt with martial artists. You end up, usually, anytime you join a martial arts school, it takes you about a day to figure out who the cop is in the room because there's always a cop in the martial arts class.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that hit me about that, I was like, yes, that's the thing about physical culture. Orderly people who, and that it is something that requires order in society. You can't, there's no gym in a place where everyone's talking with a gun. There's no reason for physical training. Everybody murders each other. There's this self-improvement is now moot. Society is unstable. And I'm like realizing, I'm like, no, this is really like a thing. There's this sort of activist, Occupy, this movement of people who they want chaos. They're not really soldiers, but they sort of see themselves as revolutionaries in some, who knows what tradition they're thinking the revolutionaries in. It's like they're like the Napoleon's Imperial Army, or I mean, who knows what they think they are. And
disciple of ideas only.
And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, and I stay in shape and I do all these things. My life has to be relatively orderly for this. And so I was like, I got to stay like informed on certain information, just to get better at just lifting, But really, I was like, my circle of what I'm interested in is relatively large because of the orderliness of life, and that I sort of want to know why things are, how do eggs always get to the shelf in the store? Those kind of things, because I eat a lot of eggs. And I was like, people will be like, oh, I have chickens. I'm like, oh, are chickens really cost effective? I should look up. That kind of thing. And so, and I figure everybody does this, but I've come to find out, no, this is really, this is sort of one of those things that conservatives, libertarians, they're more likely to like an orderly society, to like other people. And so that's a big part of it, is they don't have sort of a weird hatred of other people because of their ideas. That, oh, your ideas are this, that, and this. You just must be bad. I'm not even going to consider I'm going to then associate your interests. Oh, you have muscles and you're a libertarian. Those gotta go together.
Well, you just hit upon something that I noticed and has been reaffirmed all my life is, back when I was growing up, I'm a child of the early 60s and so forth. I remember when Kennedy was shot. I know exactly where I was when Kennedy was shot. And back in that day, if we're talking about, back they had the presidential fitness competitions. They had recess, they had gym class all the time. So for somebody to be overweight was extraordinarily rare. Rare, especially kids. You always have one or two kids maybe at the most in school that were considered they were considered circus freaks. They wouldn't even stand out now. Now the thing is that they were demonized and vilified and mistreated and so forth. And I object to people who are not, considered certain people's idea of physical beauty to be vilified or whatever. But the thing is that you have prejudice. Human beings are kind of unusual in the fact that you have prejudice against people who we view as being less than average. Human beings seem to despise people who are weak or this, that. But then, on the other hand, they despise or mistrust or loathe or will resent people who are perceived as superior. Like people say, well, you make judgments against people who are not ideal physical. I mean, they don't say this to me, but overall, a lot of people who are physical elitists, people who love to be in shape and so forth, people will look at them and automatically make the assumption, well, you're a snob and you think you're superior. Or you must be vain. You can't be a very deep person, have deep emotional ties with people because you're so, look at you. You obviously spend every waking moment working on yourself, looking at you. You can't have any deep emotional, meaningful ties because you're just concerned about your physical beauty or whatever, your performance, how many push-ups you can do, and look at my abs. And that's not true. I hear that, and I resent. I think you're basically discriminating against a person who really whose only sin is wanting to feel good and work hard and have go through a certain creative process to perhaps look a certain way, but they're doing it for themselves, not so they could belittle other people or to misjudge. And yet, you got people who don't look like you, who don't look like Frank Zane or Schwarzenegger, who go, you know, they'll just, there's a lot of haters out there towards that, you know. Then you got people who are very, regardless if they look like you or Schwarzenegger or Zane, who will be haters and loathe people who are not physically beautiful, by most people who are overweight. And it's just a mess all the way around. I'm concerned for that. Now we got people who are trying to tell us how, one, we can't, there's no such thing as first place or winners or losers. We're all equal, and we shouldn't take pride in our achievements. We shouldn't feel bad about not achieving. We should just exist and love one another and be happy. And that's a crock too, because you know it's I think in human nature amongst the best of people to want to aspire to be the best, and then pass on that inspiration to other people to help uplift people around you, and look to people who are help uplift you as you help uplift people around you.
And there is the thing too that when somebody achieves sort of a best level, there really is sort of this myth that I think has come since I really pick it up, that I can't find it past the 60s really. Right. That the thing of, oh, you've achieved, you know, like 100 reps of 500-pound squat. You know, you're the first person to ever do that. You know, that they then you then cast aspersions upon them, because it's like, oh, that's all they dedicate their life to. They must hate people who can't squat. You know, you know, and so it's then this thing that I found that mental state seems to be something that was really guarded against. That people were, you know, everybody has what they're going to be good at. Yeah. That's why you have to live fully. Yeah. And you know, and that's why you embrace life. Right. You know, and you have to do things in the world, because then you'll find what you do very well. Right. You know, and that there's really something has happened to that. There's something that's happened to, like, and definitely there's two people actually who made me, I did something that just popped in my head about this. Pavel Tsatsouline and Dan John had their book Easy Strength, that club sports have sort of ruined physical culture and physical betterment.
Now you mean club sports? You mean
like school soccer?
Okay.
And, you know, like especially the famous soccer mom and the culture
that
started in the
push
90s.
Specialty fitness, specialty sports. Yeah.
And then there was a guy who I gotta send you his name, because he's that guy I was talking about, that Italian guy from like New Jersey, who was talking about what it was like back in the day, trying to, like, because there's no protein powder, like, so you just drank hella milk. You know? And you know, you ate steak and you drank milk. You know, and one of the things he kind of touched on this too, where he's like, well, we just worked out for the hell of it.
Yeah, for fun.
We didn't. It wasn't. You know, nobody was trying to win some weird sport where you lifted a weight 100 times, then you did 100 pull-ups. Like, that just didn't exist, you know.
Like CrossFit.
And so I was like, one of those things. I was like, yes, there because people no longer sort of do these kind of a greater achievement. Like, they built a gym and then, you know, like, gave a bunch of, like, high school kids memberships. Right. Because that's what, say, we would just think some business owner, you know, did something nice. Yeah. That's what would appear in the paper. Right. We don't think of it as this lifter, you know, that we don't put them in the same category. Right. You know, because they're not in a CrossFit competition. Right. They only own a gym. Right. And did all this stuff for people, you know, for other people. Right. And it just looks like it was just a business just did something. Yeah. And that to some degree, Trump, there's I noticed this similar kind of thing. He is a business guy. How could he be good? How could he be a decent person? He's probably bad. He has money. Yeah. And that it's not that he liked getting contracts fulfilled and building things, and he did that very well. But we don't look at that like, well, there's got to be a Trump. There's got to be somebody who builds buildings and builds lots of.
Well, that's her job,
and that's her. Yeah, you know.
Even if he wasn't a horrible person, you know, which is it's a fallacy to believe, obviously, that all people with money and who are rich are evil people who are just merely selfish and that's it. But let's say for the argument that Trump was a lot of bad things. The fact is, and I think this issue came up where a lot of people say, "Oh, what do you know? You don't have integrity. Why should we follow you? You've gone bankrupt a couple times. You've done this, you've done that." And one thing he said, and I'm not like saying I'm for Trump or anything like this, but the one thing he said that is true is these are legalities. These are economic legal rules that are put in place that allow businesses these other avenues to save their companies, their jobs. Which means as he said, this is not like this has been instilled. I didn't force the government to do this. I didn't create these rules. I didn't use political pressure to create these rules. You know, it can be argued that that other rich people or businesses encourage government to put these policies in place. But the fact is, everybody wants jobs. It would do nobody any good if my company's totally folded up and I couldn't restructure the jobs to go. Then people would say, well, you know, why aren't you fighting to keep the jobs? You know, so he says, you can say what I said, I'm a multi-billionaire, I've done these as part of things. A lot of times when companies get into financial trouble and they need restructuring, it's not always like my fault, not always. Things come up all the time, you know, ebbs and flows, and things happen that's out of my control, and then I have to respond. He goes, and so, you know, it could be argued he's a horrible person or selfish, this and that, but the thing is, what he's doing is legal. And you get so many people who say, oh, these people, you know, they're rich, it's not right, they're just greedy and this and that. These are the people who create. Without them, most people would be serfs. We'd be out there in the fields with wooden plows and maybe mules if we were lucky.
That's one that really gets me, that I've definitely picked up on. That I noticed almost universally, anybody I've run into who has any knowledge of anything libertarian or Austrian economics, they always know history and the history of what humans did not have. And I've noticed that is the antithesis when liberals have extremely bizarre ideas about the labor intensity of just human existence. And it's really interesting when, like, say they won't, like, one that came up in my studies and then started as I was studying more and more libertarian stuff, and then something that really, you know, like, it would come up then, you know, oh, this country, blah, 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 it's so poor and we need to help them and this and that. And it's like, okay, here's the problem. There's no rivers. You know, it's, you know, so if you're talking about a lot of places in Africa, there's only a river in the winter. There's no rivers from any season on.
Or beasts of burden, even.
Or that, you know, or it's that you can have beasts of burden, but unfortunately they still have megalithic predators. So until you deal with the megalithic predators that will eat your beasts of burden, there's all these problems you have with all these, you know. And so somebody was writing about, like, it was like Thomas Sowell or something got into that, if, you know, you can grow all the melons you want, but
you don't have,
if you have elephants that will eat them, then that's it. You know, once they decide, once a whole pack of elephants decides to eat everything that you grow,
and then you get into sticky wicket of, like, okay, well, let's kill all the elephants. Well, then what happens there? Then the predators die. You know, the thing is that there's always repercussions. There's always the law of causality. Whatever you do is going to have some sort of cause, and it may not be something you want. It often isn't something a cause. You won't get the response that you want, and there may really not be in that situation any real viable solution. And it is what it is.
And that's another that has hit me where at times I sort of bring up, I'm like, no, that's uniquely why the United States is successful. I was like, we have rivers, you know. I was like, that there's all these things that
surrounded by ocean.
I was like, without those things, that we would just be stuck. I was like, that's why there's the Americas, but the United States is uniquely wealthy. I was we had, the chance for certain people to come in at a very certain time, and that's what did that. I was like, and it's weird because I've realized a lot of what happens with people is they don't realize, like, if people in the country with rivers can't swim, all the rivers don't matter.
Yeah,
you have to have people.
You got to be able to handle the resources that you get.
Who know what? Who even would know what to do.
Or the motivations. Let's say you know what needs to be done, but then what's the motivation? Like, for instance, like I see a very real need for people to have affordable housing. Nobody could argue that it's a bad idea for everybody to have affordable housing. You could argue whether people should be given housing for free if there's a right that all people have the right to free housing. That could be argued, and I could see strong arguments against that everybody should just be entitled to free housing and free food, not do anything. But I don't think it'd be argued that people shouldn't have at least opportunity for affordable housing or education or whatever. But it's one of those things that we have to earn the right. I think we have to figure out ways of providing that for ourselves. And so, one of the things that I wanted to do was, I after years of working at the post office, I despised the people who say, "Oh, the system's this, the rich and the powerful should be doing this. And then you got all these people who have resources and money, and they overspend, they squander their resources. They put no money aside for their kids' college. They put no money aside for their retirement. They're 2 weeks away from being homeless if they lost their job." And I'm looking at it saying, you have more stuff than you need. You're complaining how the environment's being polluted and the resources are being stripped, yet you have more stuff than you need. You're 3 people in a family, you have 10 bedrooms, you have all this stuff in every room. You don't need to do that. You could afford, if you complain about the homeless, you could afford to give up a couple of your rooms for some homeless people. You could work out exchanges to where, they live here for free, maybe they do work in return. There's always these things. Like I know of properties that I want to spend my resources to start something where you say, okay, get people with limited resources to come in on a place, spend a lot less than the market value of what it would cost for them to rent or pay mortgage, and say, here, all you got to do is pay for make sure property taxes are paid, make sure utilities are paid, make sure it's upkeep, and by the way, instead of paying this much, why don't you pay this much, and that money will go towards another property of which you can do the same thing. Because I visualize, if you had the majority of the houses paid off, the majority of people had a place to live. So if they lost their jobs, or if they got sick and they couldn't work, they had they weren't going to be homeless. They had a place at least over their head. Even if they couldn't afford utilities, they had a place over their head. And people don't want to do that. They want the rich to do it. They want tax dollars to pay for this. And I'm like saying, if you don't want to have the emotional investment, if you are unwilling to invest yourself emotionally, your time and effort for each other, for your friends and family, do we really deserve to be safe? Do we deserve it? I would say no. If you're not willing to make this extra effort for your kin, for your friends and your family, forget about people you don't know. You're saying you want the rich and the powerful to have the compassion and love that you are unwilling to have yourself.
That's one that actually,
and I find that kind of very nauseating to think of.
And especially one of the things that I picked up on at work now and then, this will come up, where it's the sort of when the veneer of sweetness slips from the average liberal woman, and they really kind of say what they think about the way the world works, and that and it will be funny because they really do have sort of this idea like the rich are up to something. The reason they have things is they got it somehow in a nefarious way. Definitely one of the things that has hit me is where I'll watch and so say somebody's cat got sick, their dog ate something, so this woman needs this time off, so there's this whole weird thing that the women will all be doing a little back and forth, trying to figure out how to help her out so that she can have a day off to deal with the pet that they're endless, all of them. They're endless number of ill pets.
Yeah. Well, how about you all, like, you know, like let her get a day off, and you all put in a pool her day's wages, put in each of you donate.
What it is, they'll cover her shift, you know,
or cover her
shift, you know, and so I was like, okay, so, and it was interesting because I really was like, okay, now what I find interesting about it, I was like, you all don't get that you just do that, you just did it. It wasn't that you all really like each other. You know, like if you really, really all had to think through where everybody was from, what their parents did, at some point you'd probably find something dislikable about it.
But they did it regardless.
But they did it regardless.
And you think that's a good thing?
Well, yeah, and I'm like, and I was like...
It was just as easy as like, just do it.
Yeah, and then it's interesting because then they'll say things about how society works that I'm sitting there and I'm just like, didn't you all see what you just did? You all literally just helped somebody out because of really their poor decision to leave their animal that apparently is poorly trained and eats lethal things around the house,
right?
You know,
and the box of chocolates, and, you know, everything poisonous. Yeah.
So somehow, so this, I was like, okay, so the dog's not going to die. This person's okay. You all just jumped in to do this. But somehow, the way that like people at like Pepsi Cola gets things done every day is nefarious.
Yeah.
You know that they know, they're like, oh, people can't stand but to drink Pepsi Cola, you know, or something. And I'm just sitting there like, you all are acting like these are crack dealers, you know. And I'm afraid that's just not how it works because I've seen crack dealers like. They are really frightening people.
Yeah.
They intimidate you when you come near them. You know, like you actually don't want to be around them. You know, you have to go places that are unsafe and terrible to be around someone who uses nefarious methods to get what they have. I was like, and I'm just sitting there, just like, you all don't see that kind of, not altruism, but that sense of just helping out is normal. It actually
not that hard.
To be built in that women will just do it. Like, and
men
I've
too.
seen this, men too, and it's interesting too, like the way that men do it.
Mm-hmm.
That guys talking about, you know, lamenting something that really is more of a psychic problem, like how he's getting along with somebody.
Right.
Rarely will another man be like, you know, how do I help you get along with that other person? Like trying to, some emotional, you know, dribble, gobbledygook. Now, if suddenly you're looking at a guy and he's trying to move a couch, and you're like, why are you moving a couch all alone?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have any help, you know? And then we'll be like, do you want help? Because of course, in our mind, I started thinking libertarians really map this out. You are seeing risk, and that you are naturally putting yourself in that, because you're like, wait, what you're risking right now is so high that I'm this setting off danger alarms in my mind, you know. And so I was like, that's really a quite natural thing, and when you actually have a society that functions, that's very normal.
Right.
And I really, I've found this is very interesting. Like, Eugene has a lot of people that will cast malign. You know, like, oh, well, the only reason why police are police is because they like kicking the shit out of people. It's like you really think they went through all that effort? Yeah. You know, like I mean, he's driving around all day.
Just looking.
Somebody you know, like,
there you go. Oh, boy.
I know, totally.
I'm hitting at the bit.
I know, totally. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, that. And then I'm like, yes, because apparently this is something also I've had to now wonder a bit more about conservatives and libertarians, is because of the orderly fashion of society, and especially certain institutions such as the military. everybody I know who's ever been in the military knew some guy who shouldn't have been in there.
Sure.
You know, and they were like,
that's true for any organization.
Yeah, you know, but I mean, like,
any,
that extreme is a real good one because this is a person who frightens me and I'm armed.
Yeah.
You know, like they're on my team and I'm frightened of them.
Yeah.
Like, and so I thought about that. I was like, yes.
Yeah, I do.
That's not normal for liberals to ever encounter. They never, because they don't have these institutions that have anything to do with usually physical protection or coercion or the military.
Right.
They kind of avoid that and they don't really like it.
You know, it's funny you should say that. You know, I mean, that brings an interesting thought because you know, looking at a lot of the people that I worked with, who were a lot of them, they were so many of them that were liberal, so many of them that were, you know, conservative. But the liberal people, and this isn't. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying like there's some people who are liberal. They just have this desire to help people see suffering cease in humanity. So some people become liberals because they like the platform that's going to like help people. Without really thinking it deep enough to see how that could be like not cost effective and actually get in the way of helping people. You know, but their initial intentions on the surface is good, but a lot of the majority of liberals that I've met are, well, they've been insulated. You know, they come from a family. They've been kids. They go from kids. Most of them don't go in the military. If they do for sure, like the Air Force or something that's, you know, not. I mean, the majority of liberals I know that were in the military were like in the Air Force. Something that's not like so frontline grunt. We're gonna get you out there. It's usually a techie job or something in a support position for the Army or the Marines. All right. So, and then they went to college, and they, you know, all these liberal ideas in college, and they took liberal arts. They took music and dance and humanitarian stuff, anthropology, sociology. They said they didn't do business. They didn't do engineering. They didn't do the sciences. If they did sciences, it was something like biology. Let's just, you know, let's just trudge around a duck pond and look at stuff, you know. And so they have a very insulated view of what really works in economic, you know, the real mechanism of economics or business. Most of these people, you know, haven't gone homeless. So they haven't like suffered or had to work like, you know, I mean, there are places that are sweatshops. You know, try tree planting stuff, working on a shrimp boat, a fish boat, you know, all this other stuff. And then, so they're insulated, and they think they have this airy-fairy idea of like, we could do this, and this is how it should be. And you're like, yeah, it would be nice if all of humanity got together and everybody was fed, and it was this, and this. But the means of what you're thinking of should be done is going to be done by theft, or it's not going to be. We can't afford it. And if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. You know? And the thing is, are there things to be done to help people in a way? You know, to bring them, you know, to keep them from starving? Yes. Give up one of your bedrooms and allow some homeless person to stay there. Yes, there are dozens of ways that will not impact adversely the tax system or the infrastructure by actually extending your hand out. Because you got most of the libertarians I know are textbook libertarians. They don't actually get their hands dirty. They may go flip the food for Lane County for a day, once a month, and package the food. But that doesn't cost them anything. That's a feel-good thing. You know? And then a lot of the conservatives, the Republicans I know, are, maybe they weren't insulated in the same ways, but they're more like, their fears are different. Gotta keep our guns. You know? Which I'm you know, I believe in gun rights, you know? I don't think our right to bear arms should be stripped away. But it's like, man, we got to keep our guns. We got to do this. We got to do that. And you know, they found out. I saw this one research that was done. Neurologists can do a brain scan on you and ask you specific questions. And without asking you directly if you're a libertarian or a Democrat or a liberal or a Republican, they can tell you with absolute accuracy if you're a Republican platform or a Democrat. And the reason why they know is like, Republicans tend to respond. They tend to have different fears. Republicans have different fears than Democrats. But not only the different fears, their brains respond to fear differently. So they can say, oh, look at how his brain's responding. That's a Democrat. Look how his brain is responding to this fear. That is not a political fear. These aren't political issues.
No, this is, there's a guy who actually, the scientist, he recently had to republish about this. The guy who did the research that found this, because it was the amygdala.
The amygdala,
it was specifically...
it's the fear center, yeah.
Yeah, and he got into, he said that the amygdala, he goes, the problem I've had in communicating this is, he said, because of the sensory load that first happens, where you see a thing and interpret it in your intelligence, and he goes, that has more to do with sort of the origin of one's fear. He said the amygdala will show how they react. It's sort of actually more of a functional item, that it will make all the stuff happen. But it's really still what you were thinking about, what you saw, or what you know. He's like, he goes, you got to have that build up. And he said, but without that, the amygdala won't know what to do. And it was really kind of neat, because some guy wrote a book about this, having to do with this guy, the anonymous conservative. I think now he's well known enough that he's no longer anonymous. But, you know, but he did this thing on RK theory, or like, say R is the reproductive method of, like, you know, like rabbits, insects, like things that are huge numbers. Oh,
huge numbers, right.
And that they just like eat grass. They just eat dead trees, you know, stuff like that. And then wolves, which is K. And that they have to spend
more resources on just a few of their puppies and so forth. So there's more child rearing, more attention to detail, more education, not just like, well, you know, only the strongest will survive, and just by the vast numbers, most of you are going to die off. And
And so it was interesting, because when this started to come up, one of the things that did hit me is I was like, okay, so really, if I really think about what I know about American history, the late 1800s was that weird period where people were remarkably well educated, and that we actually now know, like, for certain, that if people got out of the 8th grade, like, they would know how to calculate their mortgage. You know, like, you had to know that, you know. And I think that's kind of funny. They would know weights and measures in ways that we would not now.
They're more educated in many ways than they didn't know as much trivial stuff, factoids, but their education was really grounded in math
and they had a solid base of knowledge. And that and children were living at remarkably high numbers. That offspring was remarkabably high, and that changed everything. Like everything we know on the planet. There's no, I mean, there would be no satellites without that happening. I mean, without, like, that period, about 70 through, like, about 1920 something, without that growth in that ability for people's kids to live, and that they were smart enough to then teach them. That, I mean, without that combo, that was the magic combo. And I realized, like, a lot of people don't get, like Victorian England was similar to that, and that people shot out of poverty, and that we could literally look at, and I think one of the funniest of all, I think about it is, I'm like, well, because we could look at where all those how do you sink a Polish fleet put in water? Where all these Poles who were so darn dumb they would never get out of their old neighborhood? Do you even hear their names anymore? You know, it's like, you know, like, you aren't looking out for the Irish knife guy, you know, in Hell's Kitchen anymore. I was like, in 1 or 2 generations, these people shot out of poverty that had been the norm up until literally that, like, 1892, you know, for them.
Well, you know, for a while, you know, one thing a friend of mine and I were talking to was that in some ways during that time period, and when you look at not just the education and the the expanded life span of children and people because of better sanitation, maybe the event of some new drugs and so antibiotics and so forth, and maybe some vaccines. So you have all this stuff, you know, fresh food. We have a bread basket here in America. Even if the poor. You know, even the poor back then, just out of town, you know, you would have farmers' carts come in. People were growing their food and so forth. So you had fresh food. So in that time period, even if the unions weren't strong, you still had jobs. People had jobs. They had mechanization. They had work. So civilization is the thing that people expanded. The quality of life expanded. Back then, government wasn't so involved in regulating every little nuance. Anybody could have an apple cart, a lemonade stand, a hot dog stand. And so you have all these things where people can work 3 or 4 jobs without this permit, that license, this license, and it was a lot more potential opportunity.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, civilization comes. People, ironically, this is a theory that a friend of mine and I have, is that all of a sudden a certain generation of people have a greater ease than the parents who created all this.
Yeah.
So now we have this civilization, we have this ease. And instead of all these parents' dreams of having, I want my kids to have it better than me, in many ways their kids had it better than them, and yet it's made a lot of these kids or people who are now adults self-entitled and weaker.
Yeah.
And just like, you know, not as, too over-specialized.
Yeah, actually, that's one I've actually thought about, because Sol was talking about the benefits of specialization in education, how that changed so much.
There are benefits.
But what was interesting is at the era that was starting to happen, a lot of social critics weren't happy with it. And I started trying to put it together.
A lot of social critics were not happy with specialization.
Not happy with specialization, and so what happened was I was sitting back and I'm like, I wonder if these are two eras using the same word but not in exactly the same way. And I started to think I'm thinking what you're talking about is what the social critics were talking about back then. That people are, instead of having sort of the true liberal arts background where it's that that logic, grammar, rhetoric, such that like you have actually studied logic.
Right.
Like you really do understand grammar, and that you study like actual like the English language enough to really like that it comes out correctly, and that you don't redefine words.
Yeah.
You don't like that one.
Well, it's my understanding that the true liberal arts program back in the day didn't just include all that, but also you had shop class.
Yes, well, because that would be, say, a part of geometry, probably.
Or it was a part of, like, I remember back in the day when my father, my grandfather, all these people had all this liberal arts education. They had a broad education, but, they fixed their own car.
Yeah.
They may have built their own house. They certainly could fix their own wiring, put in new wiring, build a room, do the plumbing. They didn't have to go to school for that. They learned that in shop class and some other things, but then they kind of took it on themselves. You got, most people now themselves could not do any of that stuff.
Yeah. But when actually the house I'm at, the guy just had to have the floor and all the stuff done in his house, and it's just, and he was just talking about what it costs just to do stuff and all.
Yeah.
And it was funny because he's just like, well, but that's what I got to do.
That's what you got to do. Yeah. And the thing is, even if he could do it himself, a lot of times, people are so busy that they pay somebody else to do it, so they pay specialists. But, the whole thing with the education is you got this whole society that has this. It's all about it's us and them. Like I often pondered if you had aliens come down. People say, why don't aliens kind of make themselves known to us? Why? And I'm like, well, on one hand, we're just a bunch of like just vicious primates. On one hand, we're very vicious to the people who are beneath us in competence and skill. Anybody who's sub-intelligent, we might like being around them because they're, well, I don't have to feel challenged, but I feel content and they're sub-intelligent, and I'll bar them from this or that, and they're fat and they're ugly, or they're over, big boned and whatever. Or let's basically ostracize those or avoid those who are like smarter than us. Let's start vicious rumors and stand in their way, and any of the ones who have more skills and competencies and abilities, we'll just make sure we'll hate them, we'll vilify them, we'll say they're the source of our problems, and then we'll try to tax the shit out of them even though we haven't been successful. And so, it's like you got this humanity strives for almost like it strives for mediocrity. the bulk of humanity strives for absolute mind-numbing mediocrity. And if you step outside of that, you're toast.
Yeah, I definitely have thought, like, one of the things that when people go to, like, Reagan's speeches and stuff, what they're talking about is somebody who's using language that is fundamentally, like, it is just simply better to reach for the superlative, you know, like that, and that was sort of what he was telling people, you know, that, and really, and I get it now that I'm older, you know, that well, you know, you don't have to do everything to failure, but ideally you want to hit that number before you fail, you know, and it's that thing of, you know, that, and it might be the session before the one, you know, when you hit it, prior to that time, that number was impossible.
Right.
You know, and then.
Oh, so you're thinking like weightlifting, for example.
Yeah.
To give an example. So you may not have to go to failure, but you got to go within a certain percentage close to. Yeah. With it to make it work more worth your effort. Yeah. And to make it like yield good results.
Yeah, and then you give yourself, you really are giving yourself a relatively impossible goal. You know, it's and it's only kind of fun. Yeah. If you kind of got a slightly impossible goal. Right. You know, it's like possible. I mean, it inevitably becomes like when somebody's like, I definitely pick up like when people are in the iron game and that's what they do. You know, that they're this is solid. Like they'll have, you know, okay, well, you know, I got to do these things because this is just simply this is how I get to the work set, or because of time constraints I can only do these things. Pretty much just maintaining right now. There will be those things that are just the mediocrity. Like you know, we're just staying about this level.
Right.
But at some point, there's some I'm going to get a crazy idea, and that's going to be way up here, and I'm going to shoot for that.
Right.
And it's only
like Steve Jobs with Apple. A lot of examples that he did.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody, even the people who are the biggest, brightest engineers, would say what you're doing is impossible. What you want us to do is impossible. And it's crazy. And yet somehow it got done.
Yeah, and there's probably lots of stuff. I mean, there's obvious we wouldn't have the Challenger accident if there were things that just failed. Yeah. You know, we went and it failed. And wow, you know, we all remember. You know, and it's like, but then there's those times where it's like, but you still gotta shoot for the moon. You gotta, you know, that there's just there's no other. Yeah. You know, where else are you gonna shoot for? You know, it's like, you know, the stars are beyond that.
That's the one thing I noticed in my late in the game at my age. You know, like I've been doing going back to school, and I've always loved the learning and the challenge of learning and becoming more competent and, you know, having more tools for my brain that I could use. And I've always lamented not taking the time, not having the discipline or whatever reason, not when I was in high school, and then lamented all my life that I didn't have the time. So I thought, well, I'll wait till I get rich and retire early and do all that. So that didn't happen, but I'm out in my spare time trying to learn math, higher math. Yeah. So I'm learning trig right now, and I'm going to be going to calculus. I got all this stuff, and to me, when I was younger, I thought anybody who knew calculus was from the mothership. Yeah. You know, I thought calculus, for some reason, I thought calculus was the epitome, the apex of mathematics, and it's really like you just become just a brown belt or a black belt.
Yeah, totally.
It just gets you an entrance. You just developed enough competence to go anywhere. Even though, yet you know, calculus is very, very, you know, it takes you, an average person who's fairly bright and dedicated, at least minimum 2 years of like 2 to 4 years of chronic studying, because you have different types of calculus. You have differential, the integral, you know, all sorts of calculuses that work together to teach you all sorts of things that are very useful. You can't become an engineer without it. Yeah. You can't forget about building rocket ships or anything. Yeah. So, but yet that's still the beginning, you know, of math. And, you know, I get it. And to me, I respect people who do it, and I like math, you know, and I'm not, you know, natural at it. But the thing is, I want to learn it. I need to learn it if I want to stay in the game, be competent, right? And so here I am out trying to learn it, and, you know, it's not a surprise to me that most people don't have a handle on algebra. Yeah. They don't. Even the people who knew algebra well when they were in high school, they don't have a handle on it. So when they see somebody else like doing calculus or trig or this and that, people are like, they get weird about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to maximize my time. I go to a set of comedy, and I'm out with my, doing my trig, and I'm trying to do this, and I'm, studying. I'm off in a corner. I'm not like trying to impress anybody. I'm just, it's my homework, and I got limited time. So people are like coming up, what are you going to do with that? Why even bother? What are you going to do? What do you hope to do with all this?
Totally.
I'm like, well, it's an education. I hope to get a good education. I said, a person can never know too much. You may not use it, but you can't. It's not like if you know all this math that it would be useless. You could at any time use it. It's like having an app on your phone. You just do it, And I said it'd be great because if my battery goes dead on my phone, I know calculus. I can do calc. I can do things. Well, just who are you trying to impress? Well, I'm just trying to impress myself. I'm just trying to get through it. I like the challenge. But I just think I think it's a waste of time. And I'm like, dude, you have 3 kids, really? Would you tell your 3 kids not to bother in school, not to excel, not to put it? Just don't worry about anything. Just play your Game Boy or anything like that, and forget the math.
And isn't that weird when you hear that from somebody who you hear something like that from somebody who has a child?
Yeah. I was just telling that to Phoenix today. Like somebody who's like Arrested Development. They're like me. They're single. They never had children. You could understand, like, dude, you don't have perspective on things. Totally. You got out of high school in liberal arts. You were lucky enough to get a government job that didn't require really anything of you, and you make good money. So I can understand after 30 years that you don't have a true perspective because you have kids. But in a world where it's competitive, people need to be inventing new stuff. They got to keep up on things. Even engineers are having trouble getting a job. Yeah. So if you're an engineer, you're having trouble. So you really need to know the math. You really need to be educated. And you're going to say, why even bother?
Why even bother?
Yeah. And not only like be befuddled by it, but actually try to bully them somehow or make them feel bad or
that friend who's replacing the floor. One of the things that kind of came up is that now and then his kids are pretty young, and there will be stuff that comes up that I'm like realizing that I'm like, okay, you still haven't dealt with like your high school days.
Yeah.
Like you are
issues from high school.
You are so full of these issues. Like and where I'm really like there's really some stuff where I'm like, now that I'm like, okay, you have a son. You're gonna just have to accept that at some point your son might want to play football, and that will make him manly.
Yeah.
And it won't make him a bad guy.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to get over the fact that you envied and feared guys who are on the football team.
Yeah, I mean, you got to acknowledge too that if your son goes out for football, it may not make him may not make him better either.
Yeah, it might.
But I mean, the thing is that just because he goes out for football doesn't necessarily mean this, and this. Yeah. But if you just kind of put that blinder, say, oh, if you become a football player, that means you're going to be arrogant and stupid and not that bright. And don't say something that's going to limit the potentiality what football could do for him.
Yeah, and he's one of those people who and it's just really one of these things where there's times where like over the last so many years I've had to be like, well, really, the reason why you don't like people with like he'll be like, oh, America, my truck, blah blah blah, and all this stuff, and he'll do the whole thing, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, you still haven't gotten over being from New York City, have you? Because you love shitting on people who really are the people who every day they stop their truck so you can pull your car out. That's the guy you hate. You hate that guy. You hate that guy because he goes to church and his hair's cut well and he's polite to you.
Yeah.
You hate him, he's polite to you, and that makes you fucking crazy. And because at some stage, I'm sure there's some part of his mind that he's realizing, I'm going to have to raise a kid that will compete against yours.
Yeah.
That can't be lost to him because he really likes the whole family having kids and things. And I'm really sitting there and like sometimes realizing like, yes, this is going to be tough when you have to really because now you have a boy, you have a girl who lives with her crazy mama in Texas, so you'll never know what'll happen. But with a son, it becomes like no, this kid is going to start competing with other boys the moment he can run.
Yeah.
He will race Every time they
Yeah.
get to and you'll have to explain to them not everything's a race and not everything's a competition, because that's just what we do. And I'm just sitting there going, this is going to be fascinating to see him like, oh, you shouldn't do, and it's just like, no, he's going to do that.
Well,
he's going to do that.
When you bring up competition, like weightlifting, like recently, I was trying to, it's weird how things get perverted, like weightlifting. I know from talking to you that you were interested in physical culture at a young age, and that interest has expanded and evolved and become more complex, and it's enriched your life, and you've learned a lot of things that you wouldn't have learned elsewhere, like discipline and sacrifice and value and enjoying earned things, And so when I first got interested in weightlifting, it wasn't like initially it was like, well, I just want to be big and not big. I just want to be strong and fast for wrestling, because I was an insecure kid, and I was the kid that nobody wanted on the team for basketball, and I was the kid who was a loner and a bookworm, and I was the kid and I just wanted to girls to like me, and I wanted to be popular, and I just wanted to be not so fearful and insecure. So I was like, okay, I just intuited that weightlifting, I didn't want to be big, I didn't want to stand out, I just wanted to be freakishly strong and fast and be able to dominate in wrestling. And so, but that transformed itself to one, where I would train secretly because I would do things that were considered not normal way of training, and people, I didn't want to be ridiculed, so I trained secretly, And then I got to the point where I realized that it was more important to share knowledge and to take people who you're competing with, because it is a competition, to share that knowledge and help bring them up and make them like more of a challenge as competitors, and that would bring me up, which would make them more of a challenge. I'd be more challenged, and then I just, for some reason, I got locked onto this idea of like, imagine if every aspect in our life, if we had that kind of competitiveness, but with the intent to help inspire each other to be the best that we can, so we can be better and be better for each other to help out.
Oh yeah.
So to me, that's a very it's a community thing. It's not about, oh, look at me, I'm a narcissist and I'm so much better. I'll never share my secrets, and I just want to be, college man and kind of compete with kindergarten people, It wasn't like that. And then later, for me, I found that lifting weights was very spiritual or mystical, right? And I thought, that's where I've had experiences where I thought, well, I'm agnostic, I'm almost atheistic, but I can almost believe in a creator now because of these experiences. I believe now I understand that the person Jesus, if he existed, very, very well likely been trying to explain this the kingdom within of heaven to other people. It would just transform me. You just want to change it. So very different than the perception of what some weightlifters actually are and what many people think weightlifters are. So my whole thing has been like to share this with other people. You could do this without steroids. You don't have to be this way to be worth anything. But since you are worth something already, since you have value, whether you're fat or skinny or weak or strong, you owe it to yourself to be the best that you can. Here are the tools to be even better if you want. So these are things I wanted to share. So I was like blogging some things, and I've been rehabbing since my accident. So I put on Facebook, here's my rehab day, benching, and I did 10 pounds, 500 reps, 20 pounds, 500 reps, and I just kept on going, showing how many sets and reps. I was naming it all. People said, that's crazy, or you get people say, well, there's no need to be that strong. Who are you trying to impress? Or that's over. Who are you trying to impress? I go, well, mainly this is rehab, and I said, what I'm trying to do is share. And I'm just showing what people could do if they get in a situation where they can build up the rehab. But I'm also trying to show that, everybody thinks, well, if I just want to look good, there's not really not important. I don't need to lift heavy furniture all day. I don't need to be that strong. So you go ahead and be that strong. You're not impressing me. I don't care. It's stupid to try to waste your energy. And I was trying to tell this guy, actually, there's a benefit to being the best that you can be in every area. There's a benefit to creating a brain that works the best that it could be. There's a benefit to being as strong and lifting as heavy as you can without harming yourself. I said, because for example, I said power lifters. world-class powerlifters have the best bone density of any athlete.
Mm-hmm.
The best.
Yeah.
Okay, and I said when you get to a certain age, regardless, because your testosterone is lowering, and regardless if you still lift weights, over the years you'll start losing, your bones will become more fragile, even if you're lifting weights. Yeah. Now, the more dense that your bones are before that starts happening, the longer the decline. I said, you know, the stronger and the more competent, the more physically robust you are, the stronger you are. I said that if you get, like when I got in a car accident, if I was like an average person, I might have become permanently bedridden. Mm. But I said I had such reserves and I was so flippin' strong, and so robust that that car accident didn't cripple me and make me bedridden like it would in most people. And my decline was slower. Mm-hmm. And my ability to come back. So it's like money in the bank. Yeah. So there's no reason, you know, if you're going to lift weights anyways that look good so you can be hot to the chicks and satisfy your own vanity, which is fine, then it only takes just this bit much more effort to go for the goal.
Totally.
So if you're going to be here and it's going to take all this effort, wouldn't it make sense to spend 10% more effort to get like 300% more benefit?
Totally.
And that's how it applies to everything, whether it's financial, spiritual. Why wouldn't you do that?
And time saves nothing.
Yeah, it's like there's a guy who wrote the book Wealth Without Risk. Mm-hmm. And of course that's not true, wealth without risk, but with little as possible. Yeah. His name was Charles Gibbons. And the one thing he said that is true for becoming rich or anything, because when you go on any endeavor to build something, whether it's wealth or your education or whatever, it takes 10 units of effort to get 1 unit of reward initially. Mm-hmm. 10 units for one effort, and it takes time, and then it gets to a point where it just starts cascading upon itself, and then it goes to the other side that eventually you'll get to a point where every unit of effort that you put out, you get 10 units of reward. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, why wouldn't you do that?
It is weird now that like when I first, you know, there's the first reading about, say, stuff in Kabbalah, and then I'm getting these books, and it's like, so it's costing money and time to get the books, and I'm looking at stuff. I take a class, and I'm like, okay, so I'm getting, okay, now I'm starting to get what this is about, and then listening to lectures, and all this terminology that's in Hebrew, they keep throwing these words out there's no translation for, and so I'm like, okay, and so now though, I'm like going through books and devouring them, and there will be these that is that phrase they talked about 2 weeks ago that didn't quite make sense. How I remember that word. And it was because it was I spent enough units prior that finally there's just terms that were sticking. And I was like, oh, okay, I see. In the first century, they used this word for this, but now they're using this word because oh, that makes sense. Just go,
and there's a large measure of satisfaction.
Totally. It feels very good. I gotta admit, I gotta go and eat my sandwich. I'm starting to get that stage.
I'm gonna go walk over to the sandwich. That area. Oh my gosh. I am so
we totally got to come up with the we're gonna this will be